I spent 7 long years quietly paying off my parents' house, believing it would someday be a gift for all of us, a shared legacy. But on my sister's wedding day, they handed the house over with a ribbon and applause, not to me, but to her husband, as if I didn't exist. Then, like it was nothing, they tried to move into my vacation home. When I said no, they called the cops on me. That was the moment the truth hit me hard. Sometimes the people who raised you only see you when you're useful. It was late September. In Asheville, the vineyard air thick with an uneasy calm, like nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to end, or maybe to begin. Merrick and I stepped onto the warm soil, clutching an envelope with $10,000, the wedding gift. We had decided to give Callista and Griffin part of the hefty cost of the dream wedding nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The scene was flawless. Ivy curling around stone columns, fairy lights twinkling, my parents glowing with pride like royalty. I could hardly recognize them. Not at my own wedding had they looked this radiant. My heart clenched as I sat at a distant table far from family, surrounded by strangers, while the head table held the spotlight, my parents, my sister, and her husband. Toasts rang out, laughter filled the room, but every clink of a glass twisted something inside me. Then my mother stood, voice trembling, to announce the gift, the family home, handed proudly to Callista and Griffin. Gasps and applause erupted. I sat frozen, numb. The house I'd quietly paid for years was theirs now, given away without a word to me. Callista wept in my parents' arms. Griffin smiled like a man who'd won the jackpot, and I forced a smile, nails digging into my napkin, heart breaking silently. I slipped away to breathe, hiding behind a hedge where they posed on my porch, the key in their hands like a trophy, a legacy I never received. The drive home was silent. Merrick waited for my dam to break, but I only sat stiffly, the world blurring past the window. Back at the apartment, I hung my dress carefully, sat on the bed, and whispered to myself that I should have seen it coming. How I was always invisible, except when someone needed something. A week later, a pale pink envelope arrived, a thank you note from Callista, thanking Merrick for his generous gift and kindness, not even a mention of me. I read it twice, searching for a sign I'd missed, but there was nothing. I dropped the card in the trash, the silence louder than any words, and in that moment, I finally understood. Sometimes family isn't about love, it's about power, and sometimes you're only seen when you serve someone else's story. Later that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, a glass of water untouched in front of me, my eyes fixed blankly on the fridge magnets as if they held some secret answer. Merrick appeared beside me, leaning on the counter with his arms crossed, concern etched on his face. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I gave him a weary look, and he sighed, his voice low but firm. "Kaylin, I know you don't want to hear it, but maybe it's time to stop making excuses for them." I stayed silent. "You've done more for them than most would, paying their mortgage, showing up for every birthday and holiday, even when they forget yours. And still, they treat you like some polite neighbor who just happens to drop by." I opened my mouth to defend them, desperate to believe they meant well. But when he raised an eyebrow, I shut it again. The words tasted hollow, bitter. Why did I always rush to defend the ones who erased me so easily? Merrick said nothing more, only reached over and squeezed my shoulder. Later, lying in bed, the ceiling fan spun lazily above me as my mind unraveled, pulling thread after thread from years I'd buried deep. I remembered my law school graduation, 3 jobs worked to get there, and my parents handing me a check for $50 and a card that said, "So proud, love Mom and Dad." 2 years later, Callista graduated with a communications degree and was gifted a brand new Subaru, a bow on top, and a lake house party to celebrate. I told myself money was tight back then. Maybe they'd finally caught a break. But what if it wasn't that? What if I was always less wanted, the backup plan, never the favorite? Rolling onto my side, I shut my eyes, but sleep refused to come. Friday morning found me at the office early, hoping to drown the ache in client files, but the spiral caught me anyway. Mid-morning, during a tax review, a small business owner asked casually, "If I paid half the mortgage for 5 years but the deed's in her name, Do I get anything back if we split? My throat tightened. Words caught in my own throat as I answered slowly. Legally, it gets complicated if it's not in your name. 7 years. 7 years of paying checks, handling repairs, never once asking to be added to the title because I'd assumed they remembered. But decent people don't erase your name from the deed, don't treat you like you don't exist, don't hand away what's yours like a prize at a raffle. At my desk, I pulled up the real estate records. Ronald and Vera Rosund, the owners all along, no co-signers, no amendments. Just last week, the deed was officially transferred to Griffin and Callista Holloway, notarized and final. I sat frozen, the truth sinking in like a stone. Scribbling on a sticky note, I wrote, I wasn't part of the gift because I was the one who paid for it. That night, when my phone rang, my mother's name flashing on the screen, I already knew there would be no apology. The call rang twice before I answered. Hi, sweetheart, Mom's voice chirped, saccharine and hollow as if nothing had shattered. It's been too long. Callista and Griffin just got back from Bora Bora. We're having dinner Saturday, just the 6 of us. You and Merrick should come. Her voice was all frosting, no cake. I said yes. Maybe some broken part of me still hoped. For explanations, for peace, for a chance to confront the wreckage. But I knew better. Saturday came cold and gray. Asheville's leaves just starting to turn. Merrick and I drove in silence, pulling up to the house I'd called mine, now draped in unfamiliar curtains, a doormat declaring, The Holloway's Esther 2023. Callista's pink running shoes and Griffin's giant sneakers lined the doorway. I stood on the porch, fingers brushing the brass knocker I'd polished every Thanksgiving. It's like I never lived here, I whispered. Inside, the air was thick with vanilla cashmere candles instead of Mom's cinnamon apple. The living room was rearranged, Dad's recliner replaced by a sleek cream sectional. Dinner was already set. Mom kissed my cheek like everything was fine. Callista glowed in an expensive sweater. Griffin nodded like we were old friends. Merrick and I took the last 2 seats, one that had once been Dad's. I pushed carrots around my plate, heart sinking. Then Mom spoke, delicately setting down her fork. Now that Lily and Griffin have their own space, your father and I have been thinking. Dad jumped in casually. We'd like to move into your cottage. My brain stalled. You want to move into my home? I asked, voice steady but my chest tightening. Mom smiled too brightly. It's not like you use it? Full time, Callista added smugly. You and Merrick could live together? Merrick's jaw clenched. I stared at their hopeful faces, expectant, entitled. It hit me. This wasn't about family. This was about taking the next thing I had built. I set my fork down slowly. So let me get this straight, I said, calm, but cold. You gave away the house I paid the mortgage on for 7 years, and now you want to move into the one I actually own? Kaylin, don't be so harsh, Mom said smoothly. We're not taking it, just living there. You didn't even ask. You just decided, like always. Dad muttered, You're being dramatic. No, I said, voice sharp. I'm finally being honest. Callista slammed her fork down, voice ringing across the table. You've always been jealous. You never liked the attention I got, the help they gave me. That's why they love me more. I never made them feel guilty for it. My breath caught, the wound laid bare in front of us all. They love you more. No one denied it. Merrick squeezed my hand under the table. I stood, pushed back my chair. If they love you so much, maybe they can live with you. I walked out, without looking back. No guilt followed me, only clarity. The ride home was silent, the heater humming softly, the cold settling deep. At home, I moved on autopilot, tidying, staring into an empty fridge, feeling the shift inside me. The usual guilt after family fights was gone, replaced by a strange awakening. The days that followed, I buried myself in work, client calls, tax prep, forecasting, anything but my own thoughts. Then Friday came, and I took the day off, craving a moment of peace before the next storm. I made breakfast, washed windows, let silence stretch long. Then my phone buzzed, motion detected at the vacation home. My heart caught. Another buzz, an unknown call, but I already knew what this was. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "This is Dana from Carolina Watchdog Security. Are you the homeowner of 417 Orchard Trail?" "I am," I replied. "We had..." Emotion alert. 2 individuals entered using a key. Their names match Ronald and Vera Rosamond. Can you confirm if they're authorized? I stared at the floor. They used a key. Yes, ma'am, but that key was not meant for this purpose. Do you want us to alert local law enforcement? I took a deep breath, voice steady. Yes. I want them removed. By the time I hung up, Merrick was standing silently in the doorway. What happened? They're in the Brevard house, I said. He blinked, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Kaylin, they used a key, like they belonged there. 10 minutes later, we were speeding down the highway, the autumn leaves a blur of gold and rust against the pale October sky. My mind twisted. Through memories, skipped birthdays, broken promises, the way Callista had sliced her words into me like knives just a week before. This wasn't about sharing. It never had been. They never thought they were taking. They believed it was theirs. From the start. We pulled onto the gravel driveway just past noon, tires crunching underfoot, and there they were. My parents, sitting like unwelcome squatters beside plastic bins, a cardboard box marked linens, a home goods bag. Mom sipped from a travel mug. Dad stood as if this was some kind of reunion. There you are, he said with a grin. We figured you'd come around. I stepped out slowly, walking past him without a word. The sheriff's car was already parked nearby, a deputy waiting with folded arms. They don't have permission to be here, I told him. Mom's mug hit the wooden porch sharply as she rose. What are you doing? She snapped. After everything we've done for you, how can you be so ungrateful? Ungrateful? I laughed bitterly. You handed away my childhood home like some cheap prize, and now you think you're entitled to my vacation property? Dad moved forward. It's just temporary. We assumed. Assumed? That's your problem, I said coldly. You never ask. You just take. Mom's voice cracked, sharp with desperation. We're your parents. We raised you. We supported you. Supported? I interrupted, voice rising. I remember my 21st birthday dinner skipped for Callista's volleyball game. I remember paying off your house when you were behind on taxes. And I remember a $50 check for my law school graduation while you bought her a car. Her face twitched. That was a different time. No, I said quietly but firmly. It was always the same time. I just pretended it wasn't. The deputy cleared his throat. Do you want to press charges, ma'am? Dad looked stricken, pleading silently. I looked at them. All the years layered like sediment. The excuses, the favoritism, the disguised manipulation they called family. No, I said, voice steady. No charges. But I want them off my property. Today. Understood, the deputy said. We can escort them to the station for holding. Standard procedure for trespassing mediation. Mom gasped. You're sending us to jail? Maybe sitting still will make you think, I replied. By the time they were seated in the back of the squad car, Merrick was loading their bags into the trunk of our car. We drove straight to a local storage facility and prepaid a unit for 30 days. More than they deserved, but I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just done. Late that afternoon, the apartment was quiet. I dropped the keys on the desk and sat down. The deed to the Brevard house lay beneath a stack of utility bills. I picked it up, running my fingers across the seal. I paid for everything, I murmured, a long pause settling between me and the silence. Sleep eluded me. My body obeyed. The routine. Washed my face, changed into pajamas, curled beside Merrick, but my mind spun wildly. No breaks, no pause. I saw their faces as officers forced them out of my property, remembered the click of the trunk closing, the shuffle of their bags, the heavy silence they left behind, like smoke trailing away. But I was about to learn something crucial. When you set boundaries, Some people see it as a declaration of war. 3 days later, I woke to the relentless vibration of my phone, nonstop on the nightstand. The weak morning light barely pierced the curtains, but the glare of the screen stabbed sharper than any sunbeam. 17 missed calls, 14 voicemails, an avalanche of texts, from cousins, aunts, even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. Then I saw it. A Facebook post. From Vera, her profile photo a cropped wedding picture with Callista. The caption screamed, "In our golden years, we've been cast out by our own daughter, treated like criminals. All we ever did was love her." Beneath that, 2 photos, one of my parents slumped on my porch steps, suitcases by their feet, like stranded refugees. The other, a close shot of the deputy's cruiser parked in the background. She had taken those before they were forced away. The comments flooded in. She kicked them out? Heartless. Kids today have no soul. My son would never. One relative wrote, "This is what happens when you marry a man who wants to isolate you. She's not herself anymore." I didn't cry. I didn't reply. I just sat frozen, phone in hand, letting their words pierce like tiny darts. Then came the private messages. Aunt Priscilla. "Your mom is devastated. She says you won't even let them stay in the little cottage. Isn't that the one you never use?" A childhood friend. "I don't know what's going on with you, but I miss the old Kaylin, the one who always put family first." Another. "You think a house matters more than your own parents? Shame." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to type 1,000 truths. I paid for that house. I was never asked, I just assumed. I could have attached mortgage statements, the title, receipts from every sleepless weekend spent working double shifts just to afford that cabin. But I didn't. Instead, I flipped the phone face down and stood, knees trembling, not from sadness, but from the pressure of holding every word back, every scream swallowed whole. Merrick was already in the kitchen, scrambling eggs. He looked up when I entered, reading my face instantly. "You saw it," he said quietly. I nodded. He wiped his hands on a towel and crossed over. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not unless you want to." I sank onto the counter. It's not just the post. It's that so many people believe it without even asking. He reached into the drawer by the fridge, pulled out a thin manila folder, and set it before me. Inside were printouts of emails, screenshots, payment confirmations, tax records, all the proof I'd been saving for years. "In case you ever needed to remember what's real," he said softly. I stared at my own signature on dozens of documents, every payment, every tax filing, all in my name. I had bought peace. Even when they treated me like wallpaper, meant to fade into the background. Later that afternoon, I headed to the office, desperate for space that didn't smell like betrayal. Passing the glass conference room, I saw Emily, the new intern, being scolded by a senior partner. She stood stiff, arms locked behind her back, swallowing every word without a flinch. My chest tightened. That had been me once, silent, accommodating, careful never to rock the boat. I'd worked holidays, missed funerals, swallowed slights sharp enough to leave splinters in my pride, because back then, I thought silence was strength. But watching Emily nod and apologize for something that wasn't even her fault, I saw the truth. Silence wasn't strength, it was survival, and it kept you small. That night back home, I brewed a cup of tea and sat at the dining table. Merrick graded student essays in the living room, occasionally glancing my way, his eyes patient and steady. I opened my laptop but didn't go to Facebook right away. Instead, I started a new document. Typed, deleted, typed again, then started. Over. By midnight, I had 3 paragraphs, then 6, then a dozen. I recounted the facts, not with bitterness, but with sharp precision. The years I paid the mortgage, the money poured into the cabin, the times I was told to just understand. When Callista got more, louder, and first. No name-calling, no retaliation, just honesty. I ended with a single line. "If you want the whole truth, I'll tell it, but you better be ready." I stared at the blinking cursor. My hands didn't shake. Neither did my heart. I didn't close the laptop right away. I sat there in the dim glow of the screen, watching my own words stare back at me. Calm, unfiltered, long overdue. By morning, the storm had come. Not the wild kind with thunder and lightning, but the quiet type that knocks once, twice, then kicks the door down. My inbox flooded. Cousins, old friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, all weighing in. "I didn't know you paid for the house," one cousin messaged. "That changes everything." Some of the nastier comments under Mom's viral post had disappeared, like people were quietly backpedaling now that the receipts were out. No apology from Callista, of course. No explanation from Mom. Silence spoke too. And in my family, it always meant, you don't matter enough to deserve an answer. I was halfway through my coffee when the email arrived, sent from a name I barely remembered, Gregory Bell, the family's old estate lawyer. I opened it, expecting some routine form letter, but it was personal. "Ms. Rosund," it began, "I came across your Facebook post and believe there's something you need to know." My chest tightened. In 2016, the email explained, my parents had started the paperwork to transfer the family home into my name, but it was never completed. Then in 2018, the deed was quietly reassigned to another beneficiary, my sister. No legal notice was required, because the property was still under joint parental ownership at the time. I reread that line 5 times. They had planned to give me the house once. They meant to. But then, without a word, they changed their minds. The betrayal wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It felt clinical, like numbers on a spreadsheet, a cold, calculated manipulation played out over years, built on the assumption that I wouldn't question it. I stood slowly, crossed the apartment, and pulled down a battered black accordion file from the closet, its label smeared but legible. Mortgage 2017 to 2024. Inside were years of receipts, loan statements, proof of every payment I had made, from my own account to keep the roof over our heads, every cent I thought I was investing in my family. I spread the papers across the dining table, painstakingly scanned and organized them into digital folders by timestamp, undeniable evidence. Then I sat back and composed a second post. No emotion, just cold, hard facts, screenshots, PDFs. The math laid bare. I detailed mortgage terms, automatic payments, home repairs, and ended with one line. For years, I paid in silence. Now I present the math. Just as my finger hovered over post, my phone buzzed. Merrick texted, "You need to see what Callista just posted." I opened the app. There she was, my sister, perfect hair curled, makeup flawless, standing on the porch of my vacation home. Her caption read, "Home is where the heart is," written in delicate pastel script. My mug was in her hand, the hand-thrown pottery I'd bought at a little shop in Brevard, blue glaze like the lake. Another photo showed Callista and Vera laughing on the porch swing I'd installed myself during a brutal summer, stained wood blistered under the sun. The details in the background gave it away. The birdhouse Merrick had mounted on the cedar tree, the wild mint I planted near the stairs, the welcome mat I never replaced after Mom called it too plain. It was still there, as if I'd never left. I didn't comment, didn't text, didn't scream, just whispered to myself, steady and low. So it's war then. By 9 a.m. the next morning, I sat across from Gregory Bell in his office that smelled of paper and carpet cleaner. He offered coffee. I declined, sliding a thick manila envelope across the desk, packed with receipts, scanned docs, mortgage summaries. He nodded, impressed. "This is thorough. We could file for injunctive relief if they try to claim or enter. Again." "I want more than that," I said flatly. "A cease and desist letter. Legally binding, clear, addressed to Vera and Callista. No room for misunderstanding." He didn't hesitate. That evening, Merrick came home with groceries and a look I recognized. Quiet, urgent. He handed me his phone, an old recording from 6 months ago. Callista's voice filled the room, talking about family plans. Kaylin's always been the workhorse, that's her role. Callista deserves comfort. She's had a harder time emotionally, you know that. I didn't flinch. Merrick sat unsure, waiting. I handed the phone back. We'll use that. The next morning, I uploaded my second post. Bank transfers by year, mortgage agreements, title logs showing their recent inquiry, and the audio clip. I wrote beneath it, "This isn't revenge. This is clarity. I won't be rewritten." The reactions came pouring in. Messages, shares, support from strangers, people telling me, "You don't owe them anything," and "Thank you for showing your receipts." Some defended Vera and Callista until they heard the recording. I didn't reply. I just let the truth speak loudest. By evening, Callista broke her silence with a post. A screenshot of my post and a caption. "We never wanted this public, but if you want it, fine. Let's talk legal." Vera chimed in beneath with a voice memo. "She'll regret this." I closed my phone, smiled. By then, I had the last piece they didn't see coming. Morning sunlight cut across my apartment floor like a blade. I sat, with lukewarm coffee, waiting. At exactly 9:07 a.m., Gregory Bell forwarded the cease and desist letter, finalized, delivered by courier and email. It was addressed formally to Ms. Callista Rosund-Wells, outlining strict legal terms. Immediate removal of all social media content referencing the Brevard property, return of all house keys, and a warning against fraudulent title inquiries logged, in my name. Enclosed were proofs, title search attempts, evidence of Vera and Callista's illegal access to my mortgage files. I leaned back, whispering to the ceiling, "You should have known better." By noon, the family group chat exploded. Aunt Darlene asked if it was true, attaching my posts. Uncle Robert chimed in. Kaylin praised me quietly. Callista left the chat. Vera's voice memo cracked as she pleaded, "I did it for the family, the image, for you girls to be close. If Callista looks weak, she spirals. I thought we were doing what's best." I said nothing, let the silence swallow them, the same silence they always handed me. Callista called that evening. I stared at her name, then answered. "You really want to drag our family name through court?" she demanded. "It's already there," I said calmly. "I'm just finally in the room." A long pause. "You're choosing property over people, Kaylin." "No," I said steady. "I'm choosing peace over manipulation." The line went dead. I didn't call back. The next day at work, during a team lunch, the new intern handed me a napkin with a name tag, Cal-Lin, spelled right, neat handwriting, deliberate. For the first time, my name wasn't misspelled or ignored, just seen. I folded the napkin and slipped it into my purse, without a word. That evening, Gregory emailed again. Vera and Ronald had quietly relocated to a retirement apartment with no notes, no challenges. Callista? Silent. Social media wiped clean. No lakeside photos, no mugs, no weekend getaways. I didn't need an audience to feel victorious. Silence was the reward. Later that night, a voicemail from Vera popped up. "Kaylin, we need to talk. We know we messed up. Please just talk to us." I deleted it. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I no longer needed to remember their terms. Weeks passed. Life didn't explode. It quieted. I went back to work, cooked dinner with Merrick, watched documentaries, argued about camping. He was all in, I wasn't. We laughed more, not because things were perfect, but because the air was finally clear. One crisp Saturday, I drove to Brevard. The vacation home, once almost lost, was now rented to June, a traveling writer. She welcomed me with a smile that needed no words. Inside, the space felt lived in. A few personal touches, books scattered, a vintage typewriter by the window. It still smelled faintly of lemon oil and cedar, the way I liked it. She showed me linen napkins she'd found in the kitchen drawer, handmade, a gift I'd left behind once, but now stayed. She smiled, running her fingers over the stitching. "Feels like someone really lived here," she said. I nodded softly. We did. A few days later, an email from Callista landed. Stiff, polite paragraphs, vague regret, no apology, a desire to preserve peace. I didn't reply. The next day, a bouquet of lilies arrived at my office. No card. "They're not for me," I told the receptionist. She blinked. "You're sure? They're beautiful." "Not mine to keep, someone else's performance." She took them, and I returned to my desk. On a rainy Thursday, I had lunch with Lorraine, a retired professor and one of my longest clients. Over coffee, she said quietly, "You always did your job quietly, Kaylin, but I've watched you. You never let them erase you." Her words landed heavy, not a compliment, but a recognition from someone who rarely flattered. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." Days later, passing a storefront in Asheville, rain streaking glass, I caught my reflection. Not a villain, not a victim, just me. Hair a little windswept, eyes less tired, a woman who no longer waited to be chosen, but chose herself. In my mind, I heard it clear. They called me ungrateful. What they really meant was, you stopped giving them everything they wanted. That wasn't betrayal, it was boundaries. At the office, I mentored a junior associate, Anna, quiet, capable, quick to apologize. One afternoon, I saw her face fall as a partner took credit for her work. I stopped, turned, and said gently but firmly, "Hey, you did good work. Next time, bring it yourself." Her eyes widened. I smiled. "Trust me, speak up early. It saves years." That night back home, I opened the bottom drawer of the hall table to a small wooden box I'd picked up years ago at a flea market, engraved with swirls, a brass latch that sometimes stuck. Inside, I placed the old house key, the one they once held up like a trophy, the same key they tried to use to walk through my walls. I labeled the box with a strip of masking tape. Things I survived. For the first time, I didn't give away the key.